Hi guys, and today I'm reviewing the Peugeot 208, the current model. Now you're thinking, hasn't he already reviewed the 208? You're quite right, and the review you'll find in the link above here somewhere. So why have I got a 208 again? Well, because I liked it so much, I thought, you know what, let's just have another go. Nah, there is method to my madness. This isn't just a regular 208, this is the E-208. This is in fact an all-electric car. So whereas that one was petrol, this has an electric motor, 136 brake horsepower equivalent. It's a 50 kilowatt motor, about 191 to 221 pounds-foot of torque. That gives it actually the fastest acceleration figure in the current Peugeot lineup. There is going to be a GTI version, type of version, I think, above this, but at the moment this is the quickest one. It comes in the Allure spec and also GT line and GT. This is the Allure spec at 27,000 pounds, which puts it at 5,000 pounds more than the regular petrol car. But as I was saying, 0 to 62 miles per hour in 8.1 seconds, and the top speed not so spectacular of about 93 miles per hour. But then, what more do you need? Now, the thing about this car is it will give you a range of 217 miles is what they tell you. Real world, it's going to be less than that. But the thing about it is that it was designed from the outset to be electric. So they claim they haven't had to make any compromises with this car compared to the ICE car, which is internal combustion engine. So how have they done that? Well, basically there's no engine up front, that's where the motor is. The petrol tank has been replaced by the batteries are under the front seats, and also the exhaust system. So you've got the batteries in a kind of H pattern. Regular chargers, the chargers are on the other side, and what that means is that there's supposed to be no compromise when it comes to the cabin space and the rear boot space, and we're going to check that out and see what that's like in this car. But I think the main thing about it is that how does it drive compared to the petrol car? If you recall from that video, or if you haven't, go and watch it now. Like I said, the link is above here. I not only like the styling of the car from the outside, and I love the interior of the car, but I also really enjoyed driving it. I found it really, really fun. But this one is even quicker, so it should be interesting to see what this is like on the go. So let's first of all look at that practicality quickly by checking out the boot. So how can you tell the difference visually between this and the regular 208? Well, it's got a little E on the side over here that you can see. That's really the biggest giveaway. But otherwise, it looks the same at the front. It's got the same grille, and the grille is even open, even though it doesn't need to draw in air. At the rear, of course, there's no exhaust pipes. And also, the rear track, I think, to accommodate the batteries, has had to be made 12 millimeters wider. The only way you can really see that is in the black wheel arch covers here. This one just seems to protrude a little bit more than the one on the front, but that's about the only difference. So they say the boot space is the same at 311 liters of space, expandable up to 1100 liters when you fold the split folding rear seats down. It looks pretty much the same to me. You still have that lip and a decent amount of luggage space there, hooks and all the rest of it. This here is a box that contains the cable. This one doesn't go into your socket. This is for machine to the plug, which is on this side, but you can get various other cables as well. There is an underfloor compartment here, and in here there's basically a toolkit and your tire repair kit. Now here's where I think there's a little bit of difference between the regular 208 and this one, because I'm pretty sure there was a space saver spare wheel in there taking up more space. So I guess this space here is occupied by the battery. I guess that's the only compromise that they've had to make. Or shall we get into the rear and see if there's any compromise in there? Let's do that next. Okay, here we are, and yeah, it is pretty much as I remember, which is to say, not that great. It is quite cramped, but the other car was cramped too. Possibly there's a little bit less space. I couldn't vouch for that for certain without taking out some rulers and measuring it, but it seems about the same. Now I should say I am 6'2" with long legs. This is the driver's seat and it is set for my driving position, so therefore I'm trying to sit behind myself, and it is obviously quite cramped. Headroom is also encroaching on my space here, so really it's one of those cars where if you're going to carry large adults around in the back of it, you need to go and check it out first, or maybe go for the 2008, which definitely has more room in the back of it. But to be honest, this feels pretty much the same as it did in the 208, so I think it's definitely about the same. It is useful. You have two USBs back here, so that's great. So again, if you're just going to carry kids back here, that's perfect, because that's really what they need, isn't it? no center armrest on this car, although I do remember there was on the other one. But the same kind of trim, the sort of half leather and half cloth type trim with this protruding strip that goes along here, which is very, very nicely done. It doesn't have those touch lights that the other one had. This has a bright roof, interestingly, because the other one had a dark roof with the touch lights. This doesn't have that, but it doesn't actually seem to have any lights back here. So there you go, only the lights at the front. Other than that, feels all right, not too bad, reasonable if you're reasonably sized. Let's check out the front, if I can get out. Here we go. Oh yes, this is much more like it. Far more comfortable, far more spacious, and also check out this interior. I have already ranted and raved about how much I love the interior of the 208. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I do love this incredible holographic instrument display here. I'm just going to turn it on. Obviously there's no sound. It's just on because it's an electric car. So it retains the holographic display of the 208. Now, obviously, over here, it's showing you the actual car itself. This is the bit where it shows you whether the batteries, whether the regen is charging the batteries or the batteries are driving the car. This same display also comes up here. So the only thing I will show you, because I've talked through this extensively, is that that's an added option now in the screen configuration. So you can actually go energy mode, and in the energy mode, it will actually show you this display over here. So it shows you the same thing. I have to say it looks better over here because of the 3D display that it appears to have here. It just looks better. Anyway, so that's about the only difference that you get on here. This is beautiful. Again, the same sort of trim that they have here, the carbon effect trim. This is the optional screen, so I'll go through the options in a minute. Same touch screen. One thing I discovered is that you have the little blocks here to choose the various settings on the screen here. But if you just take 3 fingers and you do that, then it actually goes to a menu. Isn't that clever? Look at that. I didn't know you could do that, but I know now, so that's awesome. Apparently all the Peugeots with this system can do that. Same as before, you have the little wireless charging compartment for your phone, and you can even put stuff over there. There's USB there, a charging USB there, a little space over here. Now this is a 1-speed transmission, so no paddles on this one. And again, goes without saying that it has that Peugeot lower steering column, and you have to look over the steering column to see the instrument panel. And again, it feels a little bit tighter in the 208 than it does in the 2008, which is a taller car. If you're long-legged, try it out. You may not find it to your liking, but I don't mind it. I get on with it. Another power supply there. Cup holders. Electric parking brake, which it really likes to keep on, because every time I forget to apply that and I try to get out, the alarm bells sound and it just goes berserk and all the rest of it. Over here there's the drive mode. Now the drive mode has, if you can see on the screen over here, you'll be able to see that it's got eco mode and normal mode, and then it's got sports mode. Now apparently the way that this works is that it actually has 30 brake horsepower steps. So each time, so if you go to get the full 136 brake horsepower, you have to be in sports. To go into normal, you'll lose about 30, and go into eco, you'll lose another 30. And in fact, when you go into eco, it says performance and the climate stuff is restricted. Now, the climate control on this car, apparently they have a new system whereby it's less draining on the energy, on the battery energy, than it normally is in an electric car. So they found some way to improve that slightly. You can, of course, see the range up here. I've already had to go at charging this once, and it arrived with 91 miles. I took it up to about 145 miles. It took about 25 minutes or so to do that. The range does bounce up and down as you go through the modes, so you lose about 10 miles every time you change mode in the range. So, you know, if you're range anxious, as I always am, then that's always a little bit of a worry, because I want to drive it in sports mode, but then I see the range dropping, and if I turn the AC on as well, the range drops even more. So that's something to talk about once we're on the move. Everything else in this car is pretty much exactly identical to the 208 that I reviewed before. Is there anything that I missed? I'll just go through so this one has the 16-inch Elbin diamond alloys, is the only thing that I should have said about the car. BIK banding, if you're interested, is 0% annual VED is £0. Insurance group is 27E. This car is in Elixir Red. And with options is £28,425. Standard is £27,225 with the government grant. The options on the car are the metallic paint, which is £545, and then this 10-inch capacitive color touchscreen with the 3D navigation, etc. TomTom, it's a TomTom system, and that's £650. There are other options available, but those are the ones fitted to this car. ABS, EBD, airbags, child seat, ISOFIX child seat anchor points, all of those things are in there, just as they were on the other. DAB radio, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all the rest of it. 6-speaker sound system. The thing to do now really is I want to take it for a drive and I want to see how it feels on the go compared to the 208. Let's do that. So here we go, we're driving the car around town. Let's drive the car around town, see what it's like. And one of the things that I've noticed about it is that, and particularly because, I find that range anxiety is always a big thing for me when it comes to electric vehicles, is that this one's actually been pretty good. And the reason that I think it's been pretty good is because they've made it more efficient in terms of the use of climate control. Although to be fair, I haven't really been using climate control very much because the weather's been like that it's just sort of the right temperature. It's not too hot, not too cold. So I've kept that off, and that has obviously helped. And then the other thing is, of course, I've been using it in B mode around town. Now, using it in B mode around town obviously increases the regen, and I can see that happening. I don't know if you can make that out from the screens, but as I pointed out, you can see the flow of the charge on the screen, and you can see every time when you lift off, you can see that the wheels turn green. That means they're sending charge back to the batteries, and you can see that half the bank of the batteries is lit up at the moment, which means that they're charged. Up till now, there's been half and one other pip from the 4 other blocks that have now gone dull grey, dark, in other words, and they're discharged. Now, what I've been finding is that my range has been going up and down. So obviously not just from the modes, because it does that every time you switch the modes. So if you go into sports and stuff like that, it switches up, and the mileage goes up and down, the mileage range goes up and down. But that's one thing, that's where it just recalculates. But what I'm talking about is genuine mileage. So for example, when I'm driving along in the same modes with the B on and stuff like that, with the AC off and stuff like that, I've seen it go up and down, and that's based on the fact that and the interesting is I've seen it go back up again, which means that I've actually recouped some miles, and I've recouped some miles by driving around town by using the regen. So so this is, again, it proves the point that electric cars, if they're going to make any sense, they do make sense in town. Because in town you're able to do that. You're able to actually, because of the nature of stop-go traffic, you slow down, you brake a lot, you slow down a lot, and every time you're doing that, you're recouping energy to the battery. So therefore, your mileage actually improves, and your range actually goes up. So what's it been like driving around town? Well, just like a Peugeot, apart from the fact that it's very silent, which is curious. There's no gear changes, obviously, from an electric car, so you don't feel that at all. You don't feel any step up, step down in momentum or torque or anything like that. It just seems to be like a constant torque. Eco mode is very dull. It really seems to slow the car down, so I've not been using eco mode. To be honest, it starts up default normal mode, so I've tended to just leave it in normal mode, even though that means that I'm not getting the full brake horsepower. But to be honest, even with the normal mode, the acceleration of this thing from the off is actually way more than you need in town, in city driving, because the get-go is phenomenal, and the fact that there's no let-up, as there's no gear change or anything like that, it's just constant. So every now and then, you get the temptation to put your foot down just to feel that surge, to feel something, because you're not hearing anything, you're not hearing any noise. It's got a great stereo, very nice stereo indeed, on this car. So, you can listen to the stereo by all means, but when you're in silent, it's really just making, those electric car noises where it's just going wee, 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 all of this sort of stuff, So to feel anything, sometimes you go, okay, well, let me turn on, let me hit the throttle and go, whoa, and you can be pinned back, and you go, wow, that's quite extraordinary. So that's where you start to actually feel the difference in the actual in the performance between this and the regular 208 is that increased acceleration. Um, the steering is light and no problem at all. One of the things I found, I think I probably said this about the regular 208 as well, is the placement of that mirror. Obviously right now I've got a number of cameras around the screen, but I do find that that mirror is in my eye line, and I often have to sort of duck down and look underneath it and stuff like that, especially if I'm going left or anything like that, or coming out of a junction. So that's for me personally. I think because of the fact that I'm taller, I have this difficulty. But other than that, it's not really a problem. The brakes, I just find that because the brakes are very clever in this car, so they feel very light when you initially engage them. Because I think what's happening here is that actually the braking is not actually happening. I think the way this system works, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you lift off, and when you, certainly I'm in B mode, so when you lift off, you can immediately feel the car slowing down. It doesn't exactly do the one pedal thing, so it won't come to a halt, so you will need to use the brake, but you can certainly vary the momentum and your progress in traffic just using the one throttle to an extent. But as you lift it off, obviously the regen kicks in and it starts to slow the car down. So I think that the regen is still happening on initial braking. So initial braking actually is not braking in the traditional sense, but using the regen to slow the car down. And then at a later point, you get the actual, the calipers clamping and all of that sort of stuff. And I think that's when you start to actually feel the brake. So that's where there's a difference between this and regular car. Visibility all around, there's no problem. This thing has got a reversing camera. It's a small car. It hasn't been an issue placing it or anything like that. There again, you see the brakes. Initially, you just don't get the bite, and then suddenly you get the bite. You do know that it's slowing down, but you just don't have that kind of physical, tactile sense from the brake pedal that it's doing that until later on in the brake travel. So the ride, let's talk about the ride. The ride again, I'm coming to this conclusion that where cars are electric or hybrid and they have batteries in the platform, which I guess causes a kind of stiffening of the platform, the ride tends to be just a little bit more prone to transmitting the surface of the tarmac to your buttocks. I think it just tends to happen, I think. And I think this is no different. There's no complaint about the ride, but it's just every now and then you get a little bit more transmission into the cabin than you might have expected. And I think that's now becoming endemic of cars that are that have this sort of situation. I suppose that's the payoff between having that sensation and having the sensation of the car feeling heavier, which of course it is by 300 kilograms. But it doesn't really, it's nearly 1,500 kilogram small city car. But to be honest, because of the alacrity of that electric torque, it doesn't really feel it. I don't really feel that sense. But it'll be interesting to see what it's like when we get to maybe some more interesting roads and try and throw it around a little bit and maybe just do a little bit of motorway mileage while I still got. By the way, I should just say that since we've been talking, my mileage has gone from 91 miles range to 98 miles. So it proves what I was talking about. Anyway, we'll pick this up again once we get out of town. So we're able to get a little bit of a move on now, and here you go. Here's an example of, I was just raving about how good the mileage was on this thing, and since I've just made my way out of town and started to use the performance a little bit more, and still in normal mode by the way, I've lost 10 miles straight away. And that's where the range anxiety starts to kick in, because this car, okay, let's just I shouldn't do this mid-corner, but let's just put this into sports mode. Straight away you feel the difference. I mean, it is literally quite extraordinary how much difference you feel from this car. And you want to use it. You want to use this performance because, wow, it's really good. Okay, it holds a little bit of a hint of understeer there, but it holds on quite well. I think if you pushed it really hard, you would start to feel that understeer. But I think this is, again, I think it's more the mass of the batteries that is probably causing that rather than anything else. But you want to use the performance because, wow, I mean, it's got a lot of performance. But yeah, the moment you start to do that, you start to eat up your range, and then you start to get anxious. So this road is always a good test of the suspension. It's an extremely bumpy road. This thing, of course, is equipped with all the driver assist systems. Yeah, you do start to feel the bumps in this thing, that's for sure. But holds on though, good turn in, good hold on, good grip, but yeah, if you start to really throw it into a corner, you do start to feel that mass, that then you suddenly become aware of the extra mass, if you do that. But if you keep it reasonable, it's not too much of an issue. But I tell you what, in sports mode, the performance is quite intoxicating, and I think that's one of the things. This is a weird concept, isn't it? It's like, could this be a city hatchback, modern equivalent of a muscle car? Because a muscle car is a sort of car where you're driving along, and every now and then you just want to flatten that throttle because you want to feel that torque, you want to feel that body twist, you want to feel that surge of momentum, and it's a little bit like that with this car. So so I'm wondering if this is how it's going to be going forward. It's like, this is how we're going to get our kicks. It's just from feeling, or that sense of acceleration that you get from electric cars when you suddenly plant the throttle, and it's relentless, of course, because there is that just that one ratio. And in fact, I'm just coming up to a double black lines here. So let me do this. So nobody behind. So just going to slow right down. It's in sports mode, and I'm going to just floor it. I mean, a little bit of scrabbling from the front wheels. I mean, that's how much torque is going through. No gear change, no step change, relentless. It's just building. Oh my God. Wowzers. That's quite extraordinary for a little car. What it can do there. Absolutely incredible. So, yeah, that's a whole different thing. And am I using up the mileage range? Yes, I am. So that's the other problem. So intoxicating as it is, there is a penalty. There is a penalty to that. And that's a little bit of a concern. There we go, some nice S's here. Again, like at reasonable speed, it holds on well, grip is good, it's very settled, the body is very settled. It's not rolling-poling or anything like that, roly-poly, I should say, anything like that. But, it's only when you really throw it into a corner hard and then try to accelerate, you will get that push on understeer. But if you're just trying to flow it through a series of corners, no problem at all. It's very well. And, quite satisfying, actually. So what we're going to do now is try to head on to a little bit of a motorway section to see what it's like there. Again, the range anxiety remains because, now that I'm driving it like this and I'm keeping it in sports mode, which, to be fair, like the other Peugeot, the petrol one that I had, I drove that in sports mode the whole time because it was just more fun. And of course, it was using more petrol. There's no doubt it was using more petrol. But at the same time, you're like, okay, if it uses more petrol, I'll just put some more in. It's not a problem. The trouble with this is that if it uses up all the electricity, I need to find a charger. So doing a few motorway miles, not many, just a short run, just to see what it's like. It's quite windy today, but it's not being affected at all by wind buffeting or anything like that. It's so windy that I was parked at a traffic light earlier and a series of barriers fell down. Fortunately, they fell in the other direction, not towards the car. Whew, that was a bit of a butter clenching moment. But it's not being affected by that at all. Now, it does have cruise control in this car, but the typical Peugeot thing, they hide it behind the column here, where from the driver's angle you cannot see it. So I really don't understand why they do that, but that's how it is. But I guess, if it's your car, you get used to the controls. You could probably develop muscle memory to know just by touch what the buttons do. But every time I jump into these things, I'm not aware of it, so, it's a problem for me. It does have lane keep assist, so I can feel the steering just responding to the lanes. But other than that, and it also has all the, like I said, the driver assist systems. This, you talk about the extra weight. This doesn't feel slow. I mean, it immediately accelerates. I feel that overtaking would be no problem on the motorway in this car. That biker is going very quickly, so I'm not going slowly. I'm just going at the legal limit. But it's holding up very well indeed in this situation. The mileage range is still steady, but it's starting to go down a little bit. So again, it's one of those things where on the motorway, it's still in sports mode. I should probably switch it out of sports mode back into normal. and I can do that just by pressing the up button on there, and that's going to normal, and I've immediately recovered about 5 miles of range. So that's what that does. But yeah, it seems very quiet, very serene. Not a lot of wind noise. Road roar is quiet. Not too bad for a small car. I think you could, as long as you know where to charge the thing up, you could do motorway miles. So there you go. There's my review of the Peugeot E-208. In conclusion, I think I still have the petrol version. But having said that, if I'm only going to do driving around town and I have somewhere at home to park it, I'd be tempted. Because all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to use these electric cars as they're meant to be used. I'm starting to get it a little bit, I'm starting to get it, and I'm starting to go, okay, I could see myself doing that. I could see that happening. So again, in that sort of situation, it makes sense. So far I spent £4 charging it. I got about 55 miles. Not bad. And in fact, I think I managed to get more than that. So that's pretty good value for money. So the whole argument about cost savings could possibly ring true in that scenario. So there you go. Let me know what you think of the Peugeot E-208. I'd love to hear, would you get this one, the electric one, or would you get the petrol one? Let me know, and I'll catch you again soon in the next video. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you're subscribing to youtube.com/browncarguy and hit the bell icon and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my videos. Whilst you're at it, subscribe to browncarguy.com and follow me on social media by just searching for my hashtag. That's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even on TikTok. If you love my content, then please consider sponsoring and supporting it, and you can do that over at patreon.com/browncarguy. And you know what? You can use my platforms to promote your product, service, or brand. My YouTube channel is now closing in on 3,000 subscribers as I record this. Total views are nearly 500,000, and the reach just over the last month is nearly 1 million. So join these amazing people as my patrons, including Mohammed Umaid in the UAE, Partha in India, a tech guru and social media consultant. Find him on parthans.com. Tom Conway Gordon here in the UK. Isaac Beauchard in the US. He's got some great deals on cool cars at bespokeautos.com. Reza Adil, check him out at Alizadeh Cigars on Instagram. Mohammed Qasim, business consultant. You can find him at wehms.com. Siraj Abbasi at Tiles Italia on Instagram for luxury floor and wall tiling. Mark Waddell in Canada. Zach Kogiani, a globe-trotting pilot with amazing images for sale at zachkogiani.com. And last but not least, my school champ Shaheer Hakki. Thanks for watching. More cool vids on the way. Catch you again in the next one.